Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. I came home bone-tired, craving nothing but a hot shower and my own bed, only to find my bridge, the one my grandfather built, sealed off by a gleaming HOA gate I never approved. That moment, I knew one thing. They'd started a war on the wrong damn man. I was bone-tired, covered in a thin layer of highway dust and stale fast food regret when I finally turned off the main road and onto the gravel trail that curved toward my property. The sun had dipped just below the ridge, leaving the sky smeared in orange and indigo, and Pine Creek's current murmured somewhere in the darkening valley below. I'd been away for 3 days, a conference on rural bridge preservation in Gunnison, where I presented my design for a modular cantilever repair system to a room full of underpaid county engineers who pretended to care. All I wanted now was a hot shower, a steak, and a night in my own damn bed. The road narrowed as it always did before the bridge, tires crunching over old gravel as I rounded the bend, and then I hit the brakes. There it was. Right at the head of my private bridge, a steel arm barrier gate gleaming under the last light like a smug middle finger. Mounted on a metal post next to it was a glossy sign that looked freshly bolted in. Private HOA property. Access restricted to Timberview Ridge residents only. I sat there for a full minute, engine idling, heart rate climbing. I glanced around, half expecting Ashton Kutcher to jump out of the bushes with a camera crew. But it wasn't a prank. My name was nowhere on that sign. And my bridge, the one my grandfather built in 1974, and I reinforced myself in 2013 with $6,000 of my own money, was now blocked by something that looked like it belonged at a luxury golf resort. I got out slowly, walked up to the barrier, tapped the metal frame with my knuckle. Solid, electric, probably remote controlled. I crouched down, checked the base. There was a battery box and what looked like a cellular signal module. Someone had dropped serious money on this. And not someone with a clue either, because this bridge, this entire stretch of land is mine, not figuratively, not emotionally, legally, surveyed, recorded, taxed, and titled. I reached into my truck and pulled out the thick file I always kept in the glove box. Call me old school, but I don't trust cloud backups for documents older than I am. Open to the site map. 60 acres, my name on every parcel, with the bridge clearly marked as Private Access Road, reinforced concrete span, constructed 1974. Owner, Milo Haynes. Just to be sure, I hadn't wandered into an alternate dimension. I checked my GPS. Nope. Still Milo's land. Still my bridge. Still the same goddamn road I've driven twice a day for the past 15 years. I tried walking the perimeter. No back road, no temporary detour. The bridge was the only access across Pine Creek. The HOA, those smug suburban bureaucrats who ran Timberview Ridge like their own miniature Vatican, had effectively walled me off from my home. I called the HOA number listed online. It rang, went to voicemail. I left a calm but pointed message. This is Milo Haynes. Someone has installed an unauthorized access control gate on my private bridge. This is trespassing and interference with property rights. I suggest immediate removal before I involve the sheriff. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was her, Karen Barlow. The tone of her voice could have frozen magma. Mr. Haynes, she said. The gate was installed under HOA Resolution 38C. The bridge now falls under Timberview Ridge Infrastructure Authority. You'll need a resident code to access it. I blinked. What the hell are you talking about? That bridge is on private land. It's not, and has never been, under your jurisdiction. She sniffed. That may have been the case historically, but the board voted unanimously to reclassify the bridge as a community access route. It services Timberview Ridge residents and intersects our eastern boundary. Are you on drugs? I asked bluntly. You can't vote yourself ownership of land. That's not how property law works. Mr. Haynes, she said sharply, if you attempt to bypass or damage the gate, I will have no choice but to report you to local authorities for tampering with HOA infrastructure and creating a public safety hazard. She hung up. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Then I laughed, the kind of bitter, exhausted laugh that means something inside you just cracked a little. I called the sheriff's department, explained the situation. Deputy Hendricks agreed to meet me at the site. He arrived about an hour later, floodlight rig on the front of his rig casting eerie beams across the creek. I showed him the title, the maps, the pictures, my bridge, my land. Hendricks scratched his head, mumbled something about not being a property lawyer, but agreed this didn't look legal. He took photos, wrote a report, and told me he'd forward it to the county attorney. But as far as enforcement, might need a judge to untangle this one, he said. I nodded, jaw clenched, knuckles white on the steering wheel as he drove off. I didn't go back to town, didn't book a hotel. Instead, I parked my truck on the embankment right near the water, wrapped myself in a fleece blanket, and watched the bastard gate blink red in the darkness. I'd spent my entire career designing ways for people to cross divides, but that night, for the first time in decades, someone had cut me off from my own damn home, and I wasn't planning to let that stand. Morning came colder than expected, sun slicing through the mist curling over Pine Creek like the last remnants of a bad dream. I stretched in the cab of my truck, back aching, neck stiff. My boots hit gravel as I stepped out and stared down the gate again. Still there, still blinking like it owned the damn world. I wasn't in the mood for breakfast. First thing I did was drive into Montrose County to file a formal complaint at the Department of Land and Transportation. The woman behind the glass partition looked at me like I'd walked in wearing a tinfoil hat until I slapped my folder down and pointed out where the HOA had effectively blockaded me from my own home. She leaned forward real quick after that. I left with a stamped intake report, a case number, and the number of a county investigator named Russell Dunbar who promised to expedite document review. It wasn't much, but it was something. Back on the road, I wasn't feeling patient. I swung by the equipment rental yard, flashed my license, and walked out with a permit and a contract for temporary construction gear. By the time I made it back to the southern ridge near my bridge, a flatbed was following me with concrete barriers and steel fencing strapped down like oversized toys. I paid the crew double to haul it over and set it up within the hour. They didn't ask questions. I like those kinds of people. We dropped the barriers on the opposite side of the bridge, the HOA-facing side. 3-ton concrete blocks reinforced with a detachable gate panel I could access if I needed to cross from my end. The irony wasn't lost on me. If Timberview Ridge wanted to play siege warfare, I was more than game. By sundown, their shortcut was sealed. The next morning, my phone lit up with a barrage of calls, one from a resident named David Ewing, who'd apparently used the bridge as a shortcut to get his kids to school, and now had to detour nearly an hour through winding back roads. "You can't just close the community access, man," he snapped. "It's not community access," I said flatly. "It's my damn bridge." He paused. "That's not what Karen told us." I almost felt sorry for the guy. Almost. 2 hours later, Karen herself called. "I see you've added unauthorized obstructions to the shared thoroughfare," she said coolly, like we were arguing over lawn ornaments and not private property law. "I'm securing my land," I replied. "And your gate? That's coming down soon, too." "Count on it," she sighed, the kind of exasperated breath bureaucrats reserve for people who refuse to roll over. "Mr. Haynes, the HOA board already voted. The bridge is part of our transit plan. The residents depend on it. If you insist on this behavior, I'll be forced to escalate." "Escalate away," I said. "Just remember, I've got the deed and the patience of a pissed-off mule." I hung up. Then I called the sheriff again. Hendricks returned, this time with a deputy in tow. I walked them through the new barriers, showed them the receipts, explained that I was protecting my property while the legal mess was being sorted. "No threats, no confrontation," I said. "Just concrete documentation and a whole lot of principle." They nodded, took more pictures, wrote another report, promised to speak with the county attorney again. By sunset, someone had thrown eggs at one of my warning signs. Cute. By the third day, I knew something stank worse than a wet raccoon under the porch. The county still hadn't called me back, but a manila envelope showed up on my temporary mailbox. No return address, just Pine Creek Corridor Zoning Adjustment Notice. I opened it on the tailgate of my truck. Inside was a map, freshly printed, modern formatting, the kind you only get from someone with access to county GIS tools. My bridge was marked as Historic Community Pathway, Access Route 12B. A big red boundary line now encircled the northern end of my property. According to this little piece of fiction, Timberview Ridge HOA had annexed the bridge and 20 feet of land on either side. My name wasn't on the legend. I called Russell Dunbar at the land department, got his voicemail. Again. So I drove into town, walked right past the front desk, and asked to see him. Russell was younger than I expected, late 30s, hair like a chia pet in molting season. He looked nervous when I showed him the map. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "It was hand-delivered, no return info." He swallowed. "Well, that's not supposed to exist. We haven't updated the Pine Creek files in over 10 years. That map isn't ours." I raised an eyebrow. "So, who printed it?" He didn't answer directly, but he typed something into his terminal and stared a little too long at the screen. "Looks like there was a request filed last month by Timberview Ridge Association. Rezoning application, corridor realignment, road inventory amendment." Jesus, he leaned back in his chair. "They submitted a parcel overlay with altered metadata. Claimed the bridge had been a community utility since the 80s. Attached a memo referencing a non-existent easement agreement with your grandfather." "My grandfather was a welder from Nebraska who didn't know what an easement was," I said. "He built that bridge with rebar and spite." Russell looked sheepish. "It slipped through. Their filing included digital stamps that looked official, but now that we're looking, it's paper thin. Can I get a copy?" He nodded and printed out the full rezoning application. I left the office with a folder of lies and a heart rate that could power a lawnmower. Back home, I called Bill Fowler, my lawyer, an old college friend who owed me a few favors and hated HOAs more than I did. Within 2 hours, he confirmed what I suspected. The HOA had submitted fraudulent zoning adjustments, faked a communal access claim, and backdated a plat inclusion that never legally occurred. Then came the real kicker. Bill's paralegal, a very aggressive divorcee named Tanya, found the HOA's budget proposal for the upcoming fiscal year, public record stupidly posted online. It included a line item, Bridge Rehabilitation Initiative, $150,000. Contractor, Barlow Infrastructure Solutions, LLCI, didn't even have to ask. Barlow was Karen's idiot nephew, a guy who failed out of tech school and ran a glorified handyman crew from a warehouse full of scrap lumber and stolen orange cones. It wasn't just about control anymore, it was about money. My bridge, my property, was the centerpiece in a nice fat grift, wrapped in HOA stationery and sweetened with public funds from neighborhood dues. That night, I cracked a beer, sat by my driveway, and watched a Timberview SUV roll up, slow down, and then drive away once they saw the barriers still standing. I raised my bottle in salute. The gloves were off. I didn't sleep much that night. My mind kept replaying every phone call, every detail from that bogus zoning packet, every smug syllable out of Karen Barlow's mouth. I kept thinking, how far were they willing to go? Were they just greedy, or were they stupid enough to think I'd fold? Turns out, the answer was both. At dawn, I took the evidence folder and drove straight to the Montrose County District Attorney's office. I'd called ahead. Bill had already emailed them a summary and a legal memo. The DA's assistant brought me into a small room with no windows and no coffee. A young prosecutor with a shaved head and a tie that looked like it had been tied by his cat introduced himself as Aaron Briggs. He flipped through the documents, his brow furrowing deeper with every page. "This zoning overlay's a disaster," he muttered. "There's no foundation. The parcel additions aren't certified. The easement has no notary, and these signatures don't match previous filings. I mean, this is either a prank or a felony." "Can't it be both?" I asked. Aaron didn't laugh, but I saw a twitch at the corner of his mouth. "We'll start with fraud and document falsification," he said. "And I'll loop in the Public Integrity Unit. If HOA funds were misallocated, this goes beyond land use. It becomes a financial crime." I left the DA's office more awake than when I'd arrived, but Karen wasn't done playing. Later that afternoon, I got a text from a neighbor, a blurry photo of two men in reflective vests standing near the north side of my bridge. One of them was holding what looked suspiciously like a concrete saw. I was in the truck before the engine had cooled. By the time I reached the bridge, the men were unpacking tools, orange cones already lined up along the side. One of them wore a branded polo, Barlow Infrastructure Solutions. I didn't bother with pleasantries. "You're trespassing," I called out. "This is private land." One of them, bearded, arms like logs, clearly not used to hearing no, stepped toward me. "We've got a work order from the Timberview Ridge HOA. Scheduled maintenance." "Scheduled by who?" "Satan." He scowled. "We've got a contract, buddy." I didn't flinch. "Great. Show it to the sheriff." I dialed 911 on speaker. They packed up before the deputy even arrived. When he did, I handed over the incident photo and logged it as an attempted illegal incursion. The deputy took statements, rolled his eyes, and muttered, "Jesus, Timberview Ridge again." That evening, I finally got a call from Russell Dunbar. His voice was tight. We pulled the submission logs. The HOA's files were uploaded using a proxy account tied to a private contractor email. We're escalating the case internally. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Before hanging up, I added, "If this bridge collapses under some fake repair job, the body count will be on your conscience too." He went quiet. Then, "Understood, Mr. Haynes." I hung up, poured myself a whiskey, and called Bill. We drafted a formal cease and desist, addressed directly to the HOA board, and sent it certified mail with copies to the Sheriff's Department, the DA, and the County Land Office. By the time the HOA board received it, Karen had already been served with a subpoena to appear before a district inquiry. She responded by sending out a community-wide email claiming I was endangering public safety, sabotaging community resources, and, my personal favorite, operating heavy machinery without HOA supervision. That last one made me laugh so hard I spit bourbon across my porch. They wanted a war. They were about to get demolition. By the 7th day, I'd had enough. A week of silence from the HOA board, unless you counted the flyers taped to my mailbox accusing me of willful endangerment of community infrastructure. A week of watching residents roll up to the concrete barricade, honk like I was going to, magically move it, and drive off fuming. A week of Karen's passive-aggressive emails forwarded to me by every board retiree in the area, full of phrases like pending civil recourse and continued obstruction of collective interest. I decided it was time to speak in a language Karen would understand: machinery. I rented an excavator, not a toy, not a bobcat, a full-sized, diesel-drinking, steel-clawed bastard of a machine that growled louder than Karen's entire HOA combined. Had it dropped off near the southern bank, where the terrain was flat enough to unload safely. I called the sheriff's office ahead of time, told them what I planned to do. Deputy Hendricks agreed to supervise. Just in case someone gets twitchy, he'd said. Fair enough. I waited until late morning, just long enough for word to spread. Karen showed up before I even cranked the engine. She screeched into view in her spotless BMW X5, brakes squealing as she parked sideways near the now-defunct gate. Her expression was somewhere between furious PTA mom and cult leader on the verge of losing control. She marched toward me, red folder in hand. "Mr. Haynes, this is an official warning." "Stop," I said. "Save it for the trial." I climbed into the cab and fired up the excavator. The engine rumbled to life like a sleeping god being woken up for revenge. The crowd began to gather. HOA members, curious neighbors, a couple of folks from town drawn by gossip and spectacle. Hendricks stood near the patrol SUV, arms crossed, chewing gum like he was watching pay-per-view. I maneuvered the bucket arm over the steel gate post. The warning lights on the gate blinked wildly, as if trying to beg for mercy. I grinned and slammed the teeth straight through the mechanism. Metal crunched. Plastic exploded. The keypad box shattered like a beer bottle under a boot. Karen screamed. Actually screamed. "You can't do this. That's HOA infrastructure. That's felony vandalism." Hendricks didn't even blink. "On private land, ma'am. He's within his rights." She turned to him, furious. "This is a hostile act. This is sabotage." "No, ma'am," he said calmly. "This is demolition of an unpermitted structure on registered private property. And if you raise your voice again, I'm going to ask you to step back behind the safety line." She stepped back, but not before throwing the red folder at my feet like some kind of courtroom mic drop. It fluttered open, empty. It took 15 minutes to reduce the gate and support posts to twisted rubble. I used the bucket arm to scrape the debris into a neat pile off to the side of the bridge. I even tamped down the tire ruts for good measure. When I shut down the machine and stepped out, the crowd clapped. No joke. Applause. Someone even whistled. Karen turned a shade of crimson best described as litigation red. She fumbled with her phone, dialing someone, probably her lawyer or the HOA emergency hotline. Hendricks walked over, glanced at her, then turned to me. "You'll want to be ready for blowback," he said. "She's not the type to go quiet." "I'm counting on it," I replied. That afternoon, I got a call from the district attorney's office. "Mr. Haynes," Briggs said, his tone brisk, "we've reviewed the falsified zoning documents. Based on your additional footage, as well as the contractor kickback evidence, we're opening a formal criminal investigation into Karen Barlow." I nodded slowly. eyes on the sun setting over my newly reclaimed bridge. "Well," I said, "that took longer than I expected." "And Mr. Haynes," Briggs added, "she'll be served within 48 hours. You might want to keep your phone nearby." I smiled. "Oh, I plan to keep it very close." 2 days later, she was served. According to Bill, it happened at the Timberview Ridge HOA Community Center, right in the middle of one of their infamous Wednesday board meetings. Briggs' office sent a deputy marshal in plain clothes. He let her rant for a full 5 minutes about rogue landowners before sliding the envelope across the table. Witnesses said she went silent for almost 30 seconds. Unprecedented. The official charges were serious: falsifying government records, misappropriation of HOA funds, conspiracy to defraud a private property owner, and unlawful interference with restricted access infrastructure. It read like the table of contents in a white-collar crime novel. But the best part, the subpoena for her financial records. That meant everything she'd been hiding in HOA project budgets was about to get dragged into daylight. The news broke online before noon. Local paper ran it as a headline: HOA president accused in property fraud case. Below it, a photo of Karen standing behind a podium, mouth open mid-speech, looking like she just smelled bad cheese. They even quoted me, something I'd said casually to a reporter days earlier: "You can't vote yourself someone else's land just because you have a newsletter." Apparently, that hit a nerve. Timberview Ridge's next-door group exploded into chaos. I got screenshots from friends who lived nearby, residents arguing about HOA fees, Karen loyalists threatening lawsuits, and one guy, bless him, offering to bring popcorn to my next machinery rental. The fallout spread fast. One of the HOA board members, Linda Sampson, an older widow who always looked like she was one bad meeting away from snapping, resigned that afternoon. She left a public statement taped to the HOA bulletin board. I was not aware of the fraudulent actions taken by President Barlow and regret supporting any vote that may have contributed to the overreach. I resign effective immediately. The real shock came the next day. Tanya, Bill's paralegal, called me sounding almost giddy. "We pulled the HOA contractor database," she said. "Guess how many active bids Barlow Infrastructure has open?" 3, I guessed. 13, she said. And 6 of them were unapproved by the board, just rubber-stamped by Karen and one other guy. All roads. All imaginary. Turns out her nephew had been billing the HOA for inspections of infrastructure that didn't exist, trails that were never built, drainage systems that weren't real, and, of course, the crown jewel, my bridge. The DA's office froze the HOA's accounts that same afternoon. No one could touch a dime of the dues while the investigation proceeded. Karen went ballistic. She sent out a mass email claiming she was being politically targeted by disruptive elements and that the HOA was facing a coordinated smear campaign. It read like the manifesto of a suburban cult leader. All buzzwords, zero logic. She also filed a motion for a restraining order against me, citing aggression with heavy equipment. The judge laughed it out of court. That evening, I sat on my porch with a beer and watched a Timberview board member, the one who used to yell at kids for riding scooters too fast, walk by with a box of files and a haunted look in his eyes. He nodded to me, didn't say a word. Didn't have to. I should have expected one last desperate move from her. Cornered animals don't lie down, they lash out. And Karen Barlow wasn't going quietly. It started with whispers. Tanya sent me a forwarded email chain between several HOA members titled Emergency Amendment Proposal, Parcel Absorption Vote. It was a PDF drafted like a ballot initiative, complete with official HOA letterhead and the usual legal fluff. A lot of whereases and furthermores, the short version. They were trying to retroactively vote my land into the HOA. I laughed out loud. Their logic, and I'm being generous calling it that, was that since the bridge primarily benefited Timberview Ridge residents, the land it occupied should be formally included in the shared use territory and fall under HOA jurisdiction through cooperative annexation. I showed it to Bill. He nearly spit coffee on his keyboard. "This is like voting to annex Canada because you like maple syrup," he muttered. But Karen didn't stop at drafting the fantasy. She moved forward with it, printed petitions, mailed them, handed them out door to door. Even recruited some poor high school kid to go around collecting signatures with a clipboard and a Timberview Ridge t-shirt like he was fundraising for Habitat for Humanity. I ran into the kid myself. He showed up on my property line, not the bridge, but the outer trail, holding out the petition like he was offering a Girl Scout cookie form. "You're standing on private land," I told him. "Back it up, Junior." He blinked. But I was told, "Tell Karen she can annex my ass." He backed off. That night, I took matters into my own hands. Again. With Tanya's help, we printed our own flyers, real ones. No scare tactics, no legal gobbledygook, just facts. Satellite images showing my parcel boundaries, timestamps proving my family had owned the land since before Timberview Ridge was even a concept, and a breakdown of where HOA funds had really gone these past 2 years. We hit every mailbox in Timberview by morning, and then I went on local radio. KFQX 95.9 had a morning show, local news, traffic, and rancher gripes. I called in, introduced myself, and calmly explained the situation to an audience mostly made of retirees and farmers. Judging by the call-in lines lighting up afterward, it landed. The tipping point came fast. Within 48 hours, a group of residents from Timberview Ridge, including David Ewing, the shortcut guy, staged an impromptu gathering at the edge of the HOA grounds. They called it a property rights vigil, which was basically code for "we're tired of Karen's shit." They invited me to speak. I showed up. I told them exactly what was going on. I held up the rezoning maps, the fraudulent contractor bids, the fake annexation ballot. "Here's the truth," I said. "They didn't build this bridge. They didn't maintain it, but they sure as hell planned to make money off it. From you." There were nods, then applause. Karen, of course, showed up 15 minutes late, red-faced, shouting about unauthorized gatherings. One of the residents, a retired Marine named Tom, walked up and politely asked her to leave. She called him a threat to public order. He laughed in her face. Later that day, her nephew, the fake contractor, was arrested for financial misrepresentation. He'd signed off on multiple repair invoices for work that was never done, including $23,000 billed for foundation reinforcement on a bridge he had never set foot on. Timberview Ridge went silent that night. The HOA board went into closed session. Karen didn't show her face for 3 days. When she did, it was in front of a courtroom. The courtroom was packed. You'd think we were holding auditions for a reality show, the way half of Timberview Ridge crammed into the back row, whispering and nudging each other like middle schoolers. Some were there for justice, some for drama. Most just wanted to see Karen Barlow, suburban tyrant extraordinaire, finally get knocked off her little plastic throne. She sat stiffly at the defense table in a pale blue blazer, flanked by 2 attorneys who looked like they'd been hired from the desperation and discounts section of the phone book. Her face was tight, lips pursed like she was trying to swallow every bad decision she'd ever made. Across from her sat Briggs and his team from the DA's office, calm, focused, deadly. I took the stand on the second day. Briggs had me walk through the whole thing, from the day I came home to find the gate, to the fake zoning documents, to the discovery of the contractor grift. I laid it out plainly. No theatrics, just facts. "Mr. Haynes," Briggs asked, "at any point did you consent to the HOA managing or altering your bridge?" "Hell no," I said. The judge smirked. The defense tried their usual dance, claimed miscommunication, clerical errors, community interest. Karen's lead attorney actually had the nerve to suggest I had benefited from the bridge being brought up to community safety standards. That's when Briggs dropped the bomb. He played a clip, a recorded phone call Karen had made to a contractor back in April. She didn't know the call was being recorded. The contractor had been cooperating with the DA at that point. In it, she clearly stated, "It's not about the land, it's about the optics. If we control the bridge, we control access. He'll fold once the residents start pressuring him." Silence in the courtroom. Briggs turned to the jury. Control, not safety, not legality. Control it all unraveled from there. Evidence after evidence. Fraudulent signatures, altered timestamps, shady bank transfers. Built a case so airtight, Karen looked like she was drowning in it. Her co-conspirator, the HOA treasurer, tried to backpedal on the stand. Claimed he didn't read the contracts closely. The jury didn't buy it. Neither did the judge. By day 4, the prosecution rested. Day 5, the verdict came in. Fast. Guilty on all counts. document fraud, financial misappropriation, conspiracy to commit property seizure, abuse of HOA authority. The judge didn't waste time. Sentencing followed 2 weeks later. Karen Barlow, 12 years in prison, no parole for the first 8. Her nephew, 9 years, plus restitution for every fraudulent dollar. The treasurer, suspended sentence, full cooperation agreement, and a personal fine of $180,000. As the bailiff led Karen out, she looked at me, eyes hollow, mouth tight. No apology, no recognition, just rage. I didn't flinch. After court, a news crew tried to shove a mic in my face. I gave them one line. She tried to steal what she didn't build. That's not leadership. That's theft. Then I walked out, past the crowd, past the reporters, past the rubberneckers who treated this like an episode of Judge Judy with higher stakes. I got in my truck, started the engine, and I drove home, across my bridge. The week after the sentencing, Timberview Ridge was quieter than I'd ever seen it. No HOA patrols, no clipboard check-ins, no chirpy newsletters stuffed in mailboxes about lawn height compliance or unauthorized bird feeders. The HOA board had gone dark. According to Tanya, only 2 members hadn't resigned, and both were now under investigation by the county auditor for willful negligence in fiduciary oversight. In other words, the whole machine was crumbling. I kept my distance, but the fallout found me anyway. Folks I hadn't spoken to in years started showing up. David Ewing came by first, awkward but sincere. "Didn't know how deep it went," he said, towing gravel like a kid confessing to stealing gum. "We just thought it was about shared access." "You were right." I nodded, offered him a beer. We didn't say much after that. We didn't have to. The county posted a public notice the following Monday. The HOA's accounts were frozen indefinitely, its board functionally dissolved, and an independent trustee had been appointed by court order to handle asset liquidation. Liquidation. It was a beautiful word in this context. Every HOA asset, the clubhouse, the maintenance vehicles, the golf cart fleet, the office furniture, even Karen's custom-built standing desk, was headed for auction. Proceeds to be divided between court-ordered restitution, legal fees, and resident reimbursements. I showed up on auction day with my arms crossed and a coffee in hand. Watched as the Timberview logo sign was peeled off the community center like the last strip of paint on a dying brand. People walked around wide-eyed, bidding on the bones of an empire they once worshipped. The guy who used to fine people for using the wrong trash bin now hovered over a used lawnmower like it was cursed. The clubhouse itself went for a quarter of its original construction cost, bought by a retired veterinarian who planned to turn it into a no-kill shelter. Poetic. Meanwhile, I met with county zoning officials and the new trustee to formally reaffirm the bridge's status. We walked the perimeter, cross-referenced maps, took photos. Every boundary was re-recorded, every document notarized twice. And just for good measure, I registered the structure under a new, very specific designation: private transportation infrastructure, non-community, non-municipal. Nobody was touching that thing again without a federal warrant and a resurrection. Spell. One day, I got a letter from the county office. Inside was a formal statement of apology, signed by the head of land management, the district attorney, and the regional zoning supervisor. It acknowledged the delay in recognizing the fraud, praised my exceptional documentation and civic persistence, and enclosed a check. $220,000. Reimbursement for legal fees, structural damage assessments, and emotional distress. That last one made me laugh. I wasn't emotionally distressed. I was vindicated. I deposited the check, called a local crew, and commissioned something I'd been thinking about for a while. A second bridge. Not for the HOA, not for the shortcut crowd, just for me. South side, narrower span, clean wood, steel rail, zero access except by gate. And this time, it was my gate, coded, registered, and backed by more paperwork than a nuclear silo. Because if there's one thing I learned from all this, it's that fences don't just keep people out, they keep peace in. It's been 6 months since the trial. The leaves have turned twice on Pine Creek, and the sound of water under the bridge, my bridge, carries differently now. Not louder, just cleaner. Like the land itself remembers what it's supposed to feel like when nobody's trying to steal it. Most mornings, I wake up early, walk the ridge trail behind my house, and check the perimeter more out of habit than necessity. The new bridge stands sharp and proud just south of the old one. Matte black steel, cedar accents. A small sign at its mouth that reads, "Private Bridge, HOA Free Zone. Trespassers will be reported and ridiculed." People chuckle when they see it. That's the point. Karen's name hasn't been spoken aloud in Timberview Ridge for months. Her old house went on the market after the sentencing, sold at a loss to a couple from Denver who, rumor has it, made the HOA clause a hard no in their purchase terms. I can't blame them. That neighborhood has HOA PTSD now. They held a vote in April. Over 60% of the residents supported dissolving the HOA permanently. The motion passed. No more dues, no more fines. Just people trying to get along without a tin pot dictator barking about fence paint and lawn gnomes. Occasionally, I still get emails, some thank yous, some awkward "we didn't know" messages. A few neighbors have started calling me the bridge guy, which I kind of enjoy. There's even a local podcast that invited me on to talk about property rights and rural law. I declined politely. My bridges talk louder than I do. I keep a folder in my study now. Not the old battle folder, but a new one. It's labeled "For When They Try Again." Inside are laminated maps, court rulings, notarized land records, and a single-page letter from the DA's office officially certifying the fraudulent nature of HOA Resolution 38C. 1 page. That's all it takes now. My lawyer, Bill, who now insists I put him on retainer full-time, says this whole thing will probably be studied in real estate law classes someday. He's proud of it. I'm proud too. But not for the same reasons. I'm proud because I didn't roll over. I didn't let someone rebrand my land like it was a clearance item. I fought smart, fought clean, and built something stronger because of it. There's peace here now, real peace. The kind that hums through the trees when no one's watching you, measuring your grass, or trying to sneak an easement past a county clerk. I still get pissed when I think about how close they came, how bold they were, how calculated. But then I take a walk, cross the bridge, look back at the sign, remind myself who I am. I'm Milo Haynes, owner, engineer, bridge builder, and this land answers to me.